I'd like to welcome you to an ongoing series of brief interviews with influential thinkers and diverse voices on key issues in international education. I'm Dr. Blaise Scarnati, leader of the Research and Scholarship Network in the Teaching and Learning and Scholarship Knowledge community at NAFSA, and I'm professor of musicology in the Kitt School of Music at Northern Arizona University. I'm so very pleased to welcome you today to a conversation with Dr. Harvey Charles. Harvey Charles is the Vice Provost for International Affairs and Chief International Officer for the University of Minnesota System. He previously served as the Dean of International Education and Vice Provost for Global Strategy, as well as Professor of International Education and Co-Director of the International Education Management Leadership Program, all at the University of Albany, State University of New York. He also served as the Chief International Officer at the Georgia Institute of Technology, San Francisco State University, Wheaton College, and Northern Arizona University. Dr. Charles has published on comprehensive internationalization, internationalizing the curriculum, and leadership in international education, among many other topics. He's co-editor of Leading Internationalization, a handbook for international education, co-editor of the second edition of the Stylus Handbook of International Higher Education, and has served as president of the Association of International Education Administrators, AIEA. Harvey, welcome.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
So you've been a leader in both advocating for and successfully implementing curricular internationalization across campus. Your efforts have been acknowledged with the NAFSA Senator Paul Simon Award, among many other honors. How have you approached internationalizing the curriculum on a new campus? And what advice and strategies can you offer those seeking to increase effectiveness of their efforts?
Well, thank you very much, Blaise, for being here and for giving me this chance to offer some reflections on these very important issues. For a very long time, I've actually defined the work that is at the center of the various positions that I've held on campuses for the past 30 years as being to advance internationalization on these campuses. And I believe that that work begins critically in strategic planning. It's important to say all of this and to talk about this because internationalization as a feature of the academy is still not quite institutionalized in the academy. It is a very new field. Many people still don't quite understand what it's all about. And even many practitioners in the field are still learning about it. A recent survey conducted by AIEA shows that close to 50% of the SIOs in the field have been new to this role over the past 5 years. And what that tells you is that there is high turnover in the field, but also that even in the case where more institutions are deciding that they need to have this, they need to have expertise and they need to have leadership in this area, it's still quite new. And so it's critical that when we talk about internationalization, we understand that one of the most effective ways to help it have legs, if you will, in the academy is to begin this process or to see this process or to think of the process as something that should begin with strategic planning. Strategic planning leads to strategic commitments. And when an institution decides to make this part of its strategic profile, then it becomes a lot easier to get the kind of funding to support the work, to commit to building the infrastructure to drive these kinds of processes, and to have the kind of legitimacy and credibility with faculty who are the central constituency, if you will, apart from students, in driving this work forward. And I would argue not only for institution-wide strategic planning focused on internationalization, but strategic planning focused on internationalization itself. Because even if you have a mandate, even if it turns out as a result of institution-wide strategic planning that one of the 5 or 7 strategic objectives is internationalization, the institution still needs to go through a process to determine what that means and how it's going to be deployed and what it's going to look like on that campus. So beyond strategic planning, I think it's important to have a focus on the 3 pillars of the academy. Too often, when we raise the specter of internationalization, people, and when I say people here, I am including presidents and provosts and deans and your average faculty and even students, they automatically think, oh, international students, oh, study abroad. And yes, those are dimensions of the internationalization process, but they do not constitute the breadth and the length of what it means to engage in internationalization. So I am offering to you that to engage meaningfully and seriously and substantively with internationalization, we have to think of it in terms of the 3 pillars of the academy: teaching, research, and service. Internationalization is about teaching because the curriculum is the mechanism by which we engage students with learning about their disciplines, but also learning about their disciplines from a global perspective. Research, because practically all research conducted today happens within the context of global research networks. Researchers have partners around the world who work with them to understand and answer the big questions confronting humanity. And of course, service. And that's critical because the work we do in the academy ultimately must touch the lives of the people in the communities that we inhabit. And so I think thinking of the work of internationalization in terms of the pillars of the academy helps us to understand the various dimensions of this work and the ways in which it can be manifested and deployed in the academy. A couple other things I would say quickly, and the first is funding. Again, because internationalization is not institutionalized in the academy, it tends to be on the margins. And the things that happen to be on the margins of the academy tend to be short-shrifted with respect to funding. And this is a critical issue. I know of many chief international officers who spend more than half of their time engaged in activities to generate revenue. And in many of those instances, the revenues that they generate are not even entirely for the work they do and to support the offices that they run, but to really contribute to the overall university's budget. All right? Many provosts see an Office of International Education as a cost center, a place that should be bringing in a lot of revenue to support the university and to effectively pay its way. Now, this is not cast in concrete. It is not an act of God. It doesn't have to be this way. And I don't think that any of us know of a lot of situations where deans of libraries have to go out in the huskings trying to raise funding in order to purchase books and provide services to the campus community. And that doesn't happen because the library is institutionalized and it's viewed as a critical dimension of the work that the university does. Well, the same is true with respect to funding. And so, and this actually underscores the wisdom of grounding the work of internationalization in strategic planning. Because if in fact it is a strategic priority, then the work of internationalization will be hopefully funded. Strategic priorities tend to drive the budget, or the budget is in service of strategic priorities. So, you know, it's critical for us to think of this as well. So, I mean, I would also say to SIOs to try to avoid the trap of spending most of your time raising money, because at the end of the day, money is a means to an end. And if you don't have the time to utilize the monies that you raise to lead this work of internationalization in facilitating the very transformative things that it can do on the campus, then you've got to seriously question, you know, what is it you're doing as an SIO? The funding challenge, I think, sometimes suggests that one of the ways of being able to fund initiatives that are important might involve collaboration. If, for example, you need a position that happens to overlap with the work that a different office does or a different department does, you may want to approach the director or the chair or the dean or whomever and say, well, you know, we both have a vested interest in this position. Maybe we can share in its costs. And because I can't afford the entire cost of this position, nor can you, but we both need the services that this position will provide. And so cost sharing is I think, a really smart way to move forward to kind of try to overcome, in some instances, the challenges around funding. And, you know, finally, I would say that it's smart for us to go after low-hanging fruit and direct faculty in that direction as well. There are faculty who value having international teaching and research experiences. Well, there's a Fulbright program, and 1 in 3 applications is funded. All right, that is a low-hanging fruit. And I would encourage you as SIOs to conduct workshops on your campus, kind of informing faculty as to how they can submit competitive applications to get a Fulbright award, so that they can have these kinds of international teaching and research experiences that then would impact and influence the kinds of perspectives they are able to share in the courses they teach and support the global dimensions of the research that they pursue. So I guess the final thing I would say on your question, Blaise, is the issue of communication. Again, because most of our colleagues on campuses do not really understand what internationalization is, it's really critical to communicate. Have a robust website where information can easily be found and people can understand the dimensions of this work. And use every opportunity to showcase the work of faculty who are internationalizing the courses they teach or who are engaged in global research. And let us not forget the importance of advocating for the rewarding of faculty who are engaged in this work as well. So I think I'd leave it there.
Well, thank you so very much, Harvey, for your wonderful thoughts and incisive observations, and just really appreciate your time, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
We hope that you enjoy this series. We also invite you to contact us with suggestions and recommendations for additional author interviews. Thank you.